here with a new What's for Dinner video. This week, these meals are very easy. I used up a bunch of stuff that I already had on hand since I didn't get too many groceries for this particular week. So I hope y'all find some meal inspiration and enjoy. Let's get right into it. First up is a Copycat Olive Garden chicken and gnocchi soup. I made this in the Instant Pot. You can also find versions online on the stovetop. You can find versions of this in the crock pot, but I have been trying to get back into using my Instant Pot a little bit more, so that's what I did. I will have the recipe that I followed linked in the description box down below. I did follow it for the most part, other than I didn't measure everything. So my onions, my carrots, my celery, I just kind of eyeballed the amount for those. But I am sauteing those up in a pan with some olive oil on the saute function of my Instant Pot. And then once those are a little bit stirred up, I add in my pepper. The recipe calls for adding that after the fact, but I do like to have it in there while I am sauteing things up so that it can kind of get into those veggies a little bit. And then I added some thyme in there as well. And then once all of this was just slightly translucent, I started adding in the rest of my ingredients. The recipe calls for rotisserie chicken. I had a bunch of chicken in my freezer, so I cooked that in advance in the Instant Pot, prepping it for this, and I saved the drippings from it. So this first round of chicken broth that I'm adding in is the leftover drippings from when I cooked my chicken in the Instant Pot. The rest of it, to get the rest of that liquid, I am adding water and chicken bouillon powder. And you could use all chicken broth if that's what you'd like to use, or if you do make your own chicken in advance, you can save those drippings and it makes for a really flavorful soup in here. So my chicken, again, I took it from the freezer and put it in the Instant Pot before this, and that is super easy. I have shown it on my channel before how I meal prep my chicken. I put the soup in for 15 minutes on high pressure, let it come to a natural release, added my spinach in, and then my gnocchi. And here's where things went south. This was from Aldi, the spinach gnocchi. I do not recommend this gnocchi. I love spinach. I love gnocchi. I thought that would be good for this soup because I have been wanting to make this soup for a long time. It's been on my meal plan and I keep putting it off and putting it off, but I finally decided this was the day that I was going to make it, use up some of my frozen chicken, finally get this gnocchi out of my pantry. I absolutely recommend this soup. It was so good other than the gnocchi. Let me tell you how much I disliked this gnocchi. Like, I put a lot of it in there. I ate my bowl of this soup on this night, and then I had leftovers that I was going to take for lunch for a few days to work. When I was packaging up my leftovers, I picked the gnocchi back out of the soup so that I didn't have to eat around it while I was at work. So yeah, I picked all of the gnocchi back out of this. I did not have half and half, so I used a mixture of half heavy cream and half milk, and that worked just fine. Again, definitely recommend this soup, just don't recommend that gnocchi. I served this with a salad, which was just Caesar dressing, Parmesan cheese, and some cucumbers on romaine. And then for my little bit of garlic bread there, I had a ciabatta roll in my freezer, and I took that out, put it in the air fryer, added some butter and garlic powder, and turned it into garlic bread. Cleared another thing out of the freezer. Next up is some air fryer beef. Now, this I'm pretty sure was a chuck roast originally when I got it. I got this at the reduced price from Walmart, and I threw it immediately into the freezer, but I had cut it into this tenderloin type shape when I did it. Not that I was trying to transform the beef. There was just a little bit of it that didn't look as good as the rest, and I didn't want to freeze that part with it. So I had chopped a bit of this off, but I decided to cook it kind of like a beef tenderloin, and honestly, that worked out just fine. I coated each side of this in a little bit of olive oil and then some of the Montreal steak seasoning. I season it really well. I do love some Montreal steak seasoning, and then I pushed the seasoning kind of down into the meat there. And then I seared it before I put it in the air fryer to lock in some of that flavor and get the outside a little bit brown. I did brown every single side of this, including the little top and bottom there. And then your timing in the air fryer is going to vary based on how you like your meat cooked. I know a lot of people will judge those of us that like it well done or medium well, but you eat beef how you like to eat beef. I will eat beef how I like to eat beef. My mother, when I was growing up, had to have it well done. Now that I'm a little older, I like it medium well. So just a little bit of pink in there. Also in the air fryer, I'm throwing in this Aldi carrot sweet potato blend, and it was really good. And here is my finished meat. It was so good. These veggies also really good. Definitely recommend those if you find them at Aldi. So I've got my meat cooked to a medium well to well done, depending on which part of it you cut into. And I had this with ketchup because that's how I grew up, was always having ketchup with beef. And I still like it that way to this day. Historically, I have never been a fan of leftover beef. It's just one thing that I find really difficult to eat as leftovers. So when I finished eating the beef the first night with the leftovers, I chopped them up into tiny pieces and decided to use that for my quesadilla the next night. I had planned on doing a quesadilla, but I was originally going to do chicken. Then when I had this leftover beef, I thought that would be perfect. I had some mozzarella cheese in my freezer. I didn't even thaw it. I simply took it from frozen, put it right in this quesadilla, and it thawed and melted immediately. And it did not leave any sort of watery residue on this. It worked out really well. I didn't put any extra seasoning on this. You can use whatever cheese you like, but I find that mozzarella goes really well, nice and melty with beef like this. So I simply flipped that over in my pan until it was done. Prior to that, I had made some black beans. I have had just this small amount of black beans in my pantry for a very long time that I needed to use up. I do have an entire video about how I make black beans in the Instant Pot, and I can leave that in the description box down below, but just very briefly, I used some onions from the freezer. I used some green bell pepper also from the freezer, and I put those in straight from frozen. They thawed really quickly in here. I added some kind of better than beef base in my water in there, as well as seasonings like chili powder, garlic powder, and salt and pepper, and a little bit of cumin. 35 minutes in the Instant Pot is perfect for these, and then a natural release. And then I served this with some pineapple salsa from Aldi, and the leftovers of the veggies from the night before went into this meal as well. This next meal is pretty much the epitome of using what I have on hand. So I've shown this before. I always have spaghetti sauce frozen in my freezer. I also usually have these beef burgers. Those two things normally do not go together, but on this particular night, I really wanted spaghetti and meatballs, but I did not have meatballs in my freezer. I only had sauce, but I had these frozen burger patties, and I thought, you know what? They're beef. They'll work. So in my Instant Pot, I've got a little bit of water. I've got these 2 frozen beef patties, and I just seasoned them with some Italian seasonings, some garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, and Italian seasoning. I put these in the Instant Pot and cooked it for 20 minutes, followed by a quick release once the 20 minutes was over. And don't these look disgusting? They were not, though. They looked absolutely gross. I did not plan on actually eating them. I thought these were going to end up in the trash. But eventually, after they kind of calmed down and rested for a minute or two, they did not look as gross. I cut them up. I tasted a piece. They tasted fine. So I threw them in my sauce that I had put over low heat to get it nice and thawed. And then I put a lid on it. Let it simmer with the beef in there for a few minutes so the beef could really absorb that sauce and that nice flavor. And then I added some bow tie pasta that I had just a little bit of a box of left.
and I ended up getting 3 meals out of this. I had it for dinner this night, I had it for dinner again the next night, and I also had it for a lunch. So I had more pasta than I thought I did, but I really wanted to get rid of that box because it had broken pieces in the bottom that kept falling out every time I moved the box. So I was ready to be done with that box. I had this with frozen broccoli, so here I'm just showing y'all how I season my broccoli. I do the steamable broccoli, I cook it in the microwave in the bag, and then I pour it into a Tupperware container. I add a little bit of butter and then salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. Those are my preferred seasonings. I like to do this in a container with a lid so that I can shake it up. I'm a big fan of shaking over stirring. I find it distributes flavors and seasonings a little bit more evenly. And then I threw this back in the microwave for another 30 seconds just to melt that butter and let the seasonings come together. Served that with my pasta. And those hamburger patties turned out really well, significantly better than I thought they were going to when I saw them come out of the Instant Pot. So if you're ever in a bind and you want meatballs, they're not exactly the same, but they'll do the trick. And lastly in this video is French onion soup. I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly since I have shown different variations of this on my channel before. So I always use butter, but this time I decided to use half butter, half olive oil, and that worked out really well. I'm simply sauteing my onions in that. I'm adding salt and pepper, and then adding just a little bit of water into this and putting the lid on it. I don't want to turn this into soup just yet, but I do want those onions to steam up and get nice and soft. Once they're starting to get soft, I take the lid off so all of that water will come out, and I continue to move them around in the pan until they're this nice shade of brown. Once they're brown, I add either garlic powder, or in this particular day, I did use garlic itself, just minced garlic. And then I add my thyme. That is the main seasoning that I use in this, is salt, pepper, and thyme. And then I add my water and a little bit of Better Than Bouillon beef base, and then mix that up, put a lid on it, and let those flavors come together. Now I know I have shown this on my channel before, but I do have a few new subscribers lately, and someone did ask about it when I mentioned it in my grocery haul, so I figured I'd briefly show it again. I also added a little bit extra thyme, and I wanted a bit of a kick, so I added a little bit of chili pepper, red chili pepper flakes in there. That is totally optional, and this really did a great job of clearing out my sinuses on this day. And then I add croutons to it. I get these grilled crostini toasts seasonally from Aldi, and I normally use either provolone or Swiss, but I had both in my refrigerator, so I used both this time around. I put the lid on until they get nice and melty, throw it under the broiler for a few minutes, and I've gotten questions about this particular pot that I use. It is the Rock Crock from Pampered Chef. I love it. It's fantastic. This is not sponsored, but I thought I'd address that since a few people asked about it, and it is a very handy tool to have in the kitchen. This is how it looked when I put it in my bowl. It was delicious as always.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any more content, and don't forget to hit that little notification bell as well so you know every time I post a video.